Every time I see a good open source model coming out and like Nvidia stock price drops and then Micron stock price drops, I'm just very confused. I don't know what these analysts are drinking, to be completely transparent. At Fireworks, honestly, we're trying our best to find GPUs. As the open source model improves, we need more GPUs. Having better open source model just makes the GPU more valuable, not less valuable. Specialized intelligence. We help people customize open source models. We help Cursor tune Composer 2, Composer 2.5. We help Cognition tune the SW 1.7. The most recent example is Harvey. We're working with Harvey to tune the legal model.
If Sam Altman was sitting here right now, what would he disagree with you on?
He thinks the OpenAI models are better, and I would say it doesn't matter. It's like the train is coming. There's a lot of people collaborating on open source. The brain power collectively in the open source will overwhelm the brain power for closed source.
Is AI heading towards its own dot-com moment?
I honestly think the dot-com moment is very, very unique. And it's not something you can easily repeat for the AI wave. Even if it has to unwind, it will probably look more like the real estate bubble.
What you're saying there is the concern isn't AI itself, but leverage.
That, I think, is the real concern.
Benny, you've been very vocal that open source ultimately wins. That's a bold claim when companies like OpenAI are spending billions. Why are you so confident?
Because it's always cheaper to collaborate. Most of our team worked in PyTorch or PyTorch related orgs at Meta. And we saw how the community really supported the PyTorch ecosystem to make it better to use, more friendly to ML developers. And now it's the absolute foundation to most of, if not all of the open source research for LMs, right? So I do think open source winning is not really a yes or no issue, it's a win. Most things ended up being open source. Most things end up having better solution open source, but sometimes it does take a while. I'm super glad to see like the recent bar chart from Bloomberg. Honestly, when I saw the chart, I thought they forgot the DeepSeek the numbers because it's like a line. But it turns out like DeepSeek, the recent DeepSeek, honestly, is just so much cheaper than all the alternatives in the same quality class. That's absolutely amazing. And their customers on Fireworks asking for that model already for post-training as well, so they can customize it for their liking. It is a monster of a model. And for us, we're really glad to see this continue to happen in open source, and the model architecture improvement as well as quality improvement in open source. And also like all the sharing that the Kimi team has been doing recently with like why Muon is on like the like per head versus like not per head. All these like very, very specific, very, very detailed technical sharings outside of the technical report as well. All those things are valuable input to the community, and the community will just keep on going. So I really think open source winning is not a yes or no issue. I have strong conviction, but it's a timing issue. And there could totally be a world where open source still doesn't catch up in the next 3 or 4 years and Anthropic and OpenAI still pull away. I'm sure like even if open source catches up, they will still be super valuable company. But on the Fireworks team, we strongly believe in open source.
So Benny, what's the biggest misconception the market has about open source in the AI space?
Honestly, like every time I see good open source model coming out and like Nvidia stock price drops and then Micron stock price drops, I'm just very confused. I don't know what these analysts are drinking, to be completely transparent. At Fireworks, honestly, we're trying our best to find GPUs. As the open source model improves, we need more GPUs. I genuinely don't understand why Nvidia dropped. Someone must educate me on why open source better model leads to Nvidia drop, because it makes no sense to me whatsoever. I think having better open source model just makes the GPU more valuable, not less valuable. Maybe that's not even a misconception at this point. I genuinely feel it's like so mispriced and so like stigmatized. It like makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
So let's take it back to the beginning, because this is quite interesting and we can unpack it. Before ChatGPT changed the world, you and your co-founders had already bet your careers that GPU infrastructure was going to become one of the most valuable layers in technology. So I want to start there, Benny. Let's talk about Fireworks. Let's talk about the business that you have founded with your co-founders. What's the problem that you're solving?
So before 2022, most of us were working at Meta and some of us working at Vertex. One, we saw the opportunity for AI infrastructure. Most of us were in one shape or form involved in capacity planning for Google and Meta. And we saw the GPU demand just go through the roof. And to be completely transparent with all those numbers from our perspective in 22 were through the roof. Now it's just child's play. Now it's dwarfs like any human imagination you would have had in 22. Maybe not for Leopold, but like for me at least. At that point, most of us knew that AI infrastructure is coming. There should be a company that supports all these demand for AI infrastructure and make it better. It was not 100% clear to us whether it's going to be Rexus, whether it's going to be Gen AI, like the generative AI wave, or it's going to be something else like computer vision, self-driving. But we have strong belief that this is going to go off. So I think it wasn't a hard decision at all. We just kind of went for it. At the end of the day, we are PyTorch experts. We know how to run models really well. We also operated PyTorch services. We know how to hold the pager. And we really believe we can help people tune a model that to their liking, help their business grow, and make sure we serve the model really.
So Benny, take me back there. Let's go back to right before Fireworks was founded. What was that moment? Because you said you noticed something. You saw this huge demand for GPU. The AI infrastructure was clear. This is way before ChatGPT. What was that moment? Just if you could remember, just paint me that picture.
Oh, okay. I can be very concrete. So the first wave was Rexus. So it was Meta, Google, ByteDance scaling up their recommendation system infrastructure. A lot of it has to do with scaling up the sequences for user interaction on the platform. So I mean, average time spent on Instagram probably like 1 hour. TikTok is probably 2 hours. Every second you're generating some event. So the sequences for users very, very long. And these companies start using GPUs to power transformer architecture to capture long user sequence and sort of like longer term user intent. On top of that, there were self-driving car companies that was taking off, where the car simulation rely on GPUs. You need to sort of like render realistic videos and also run simulations and train models really fast. That was also the Tesla autopilot time. So even before Gen AI, you should still remember when like Elon was showing people off his compute clusters just for self-driving training. There was also the style, I call them style transfer, but I think there's like a better name for it, for filters. So if you go on TikTok, there's a bunch of young people like, I don't know, using different kind of like filters and play games on their phone. And a lot of it is also GPU rendering in the cloud. Some of it will be like, of course, local on the phone, but a lot of it is actually GPU on the cloud. So clearly there were, at least when I was working in a social networking company, clearly there are many, many teams coming up with many, many different demands, right? This is on top of the old school, like integrity kind of like classification use case. This is all these like new use cases popping up. So at that point, honestly, it was very clear to me that like something is happening. I honestly don't know what is going to happen in what shape or form, but clearly the GPU demand is taking off. I've been working on ASICs and GPU model serving for like at that point, like 5 or 6 years. I think I'm ready to try something new, and here we are.
And who, just paint the picture of the founders? Is Benny's yourself, and who are your co-founders?
Yeah, Lynn is our CEO. She was the head of PyTorch. Dima, we have two Dimitros. One of the Dimitro is a PyTorch core contributor. He was the one who helped spin up Onyx and a bunch of other projects. And the other Dimitro is head of TorchRack, the PyTorch library that supports all the recommendation system use cases in Fireworks. So all the sort of like the sharding scheme that is like very commonly known today, a lot of it was originally from TorchRack, where we were supporting all the big Rexus models that's like 1 terabyte. 1 terabyte in 22. 1 terabyte in 22 is a big achievement. Now it seems to be like some file you download from Hugging Face. And we also had James. He was the author of Pippy and a bunch of compiler related tricks on PyTorch side. He is our in-house expert for sort of like AST understanding, PyTorch, program tracing, all the stuff. And we also have Pavel. He is the tech lead on the feed side for recommendation systems, and he helped lead our current research program. And also we have Chen Yu. He was our in-house cloud expert. He used to be the fastest promoted IC in Vertex, I think. So that's why we still have a lot of our stuff on GCP, just because he likes it that way.
Just one last thing about the founding of the company. So you founded the, I guess for the audience, whoever's listening, whoever's watching this, founding the company, what year was this? What was the starting point? Did you start off by building the product first? Did you go out straight to fundraising? How did it all begin?
Yeah, honestly, the origin story, Lynn can do a much better job than me at telling it. But I'll try my best. So we started in 22 September. We had the idea for AI infrastructure. So we got started, but we almost immediately did the fundraise with Benchmark. So we really appreciated all the support like Eric had given us over the years. We believe, at least Eric was telling us that this is the biggest check that he wrote for Benchmark at least when we started. So we were glad to have Benchmark at the start in 22. And like in 22, we started in 22 September. We started looking at different ideas around recommendation systems. And then almost immediately, 22 November, it was the Thanksgiving week, ChatGPT launched. And that's just like a hard reset for the whole industry, right? Like everyone has to now pay attention to what they need to work on. And at that point, honestly, we iterated on a bunch of different ideas. But for us, believing in open source is something like all members on the team are very aligned on. And even though ChatGPT and like a lot of other models at that point were proprietary, we believe open source model would prevail, and we started working on inference for open source models. I do believe in 22, honestly, it's still very contrarian for a lot of folks, because at that point we had like OPT, we had Llama 1. If those models can hold maybe like 3-turn conversations, it was already like a miracle. But we believe the open source will prevail, so we continue to focus on open source model inference. We also spend a lot of time experimenting across different verticals, but from our perspective, text is where the intelligence is. And we really believe intelligence is where the most value is going to be delivered. Whereas for audio and imaging, I think it's a very competitive market. It's a very great market, but a lot of it is probably entertainment related. So we continue to focus on text generation models and how to do inference and training on text generation models.
And that's still the core use case at the moment, text?
Absolutely, absolutely. Just the model scaled up 1,000x over 4 years. So very, very aggressive.
Now we're recording this at the beginning of August 2026. And as I promised you right before we press record, is we're going to put this through production and get this out there as soon as possible, hopefully inside August. Something's recently happened, as you mentioned at the start of the call with the Bloomberg chart. There's a lot of, I guess the curve is shifting. But if Sam Altman was sitting here right now, what would he disagree with you on?
He thinks the OpenAI models are better. And I would say it doesn't matter. It's like the train is coming. There's a lot of people collaborating on open source. DeepSeek will continue to learn from other people. Other people will continue to learn from DeepSeek. Sometimes you look at DeepSeek and you have the narrative that it's David versus Goliath. That we make jokes about how maybe like each individual team at OpenAI research has like more compute than most of the AI open source model startup combined. It's probably not even a joke. But it almost doesn't matter in the sense that the trend is coming. From my perspective, at least, it doesn't matter. Like it's very hard to beat a bunch of people collaborating, and that's why like Archive was set up this way, right? That's why all the scientific research was set up in the way that we foster sort of free thinking and sort of sharing for those collaboration, because information is incredibly hard to contain, but super valuable when you start sharing and exchanging ideas. And like how many open AI research Anthropic can hire in terms of researchers, like it's a limited number. At some point, like even if you have recursive self-improvement and whatnot, like the brain power collectively and the open source will overwhelm the brain power for closed source. So he's right. Like there may be certain charts from different sites that shows like DeepSeek models are now ahead of certain OpenAI models. I would still argue like OpenAI models are still very, very good. Like it's multi-model. It has like tunable reasoning effort, so it's easy for a lot of people to use. They also have huge distribution, right? ChatGPT is for everyone's phone. Like I have ChatGPT installed on my phone. That's still true today. That's absolutely still true today, and their model is still ahead. I just don't think it matters.
That's interesting. You said you don't think it matters. So what does that mean for, I know you're focusing on tech space, but what does it mean for other potential use cases? Are there going to be limitations with open source that only the large models like OpenAI or Anthropic can serve?
I've been thinking about this as well. Limitations. I would even flip it as control. So one thing people, at least Anthropic folks, argue a lot is limiting control to sort of control the progress of the field and control the damages. But I honestly think the Hugging Face incident was a wake-up call. That it's those guardrails by nature very asymmetrical. The hackers know how to get around the prompt filters. Okay, they will figure out how to ask like, hey, my grandma is in distress, you need to help me to solve this, like capture the flag problem to hack into Hugging Face. Like they would know how to phrase it. The Hugging Face folks who just trying to defend their system have no idea how to get around those filters. So if you focus on control, if you focus on restricting access, you will end up hurting defense. And Dario's argument in his recent essay is that, hey, like maybe for certain cybersecurity cases it's true, but maybe for biology it is not true, therefore we will continue to restrict access. I just think like at some point you will run out of space for you to do that mental gymnastic. It's going to be very hard to continue to convince yourself, hey, like whatever guardrails I'm putting in, it is a net positive to the society, meaning that I'm helping people defend better than helping the attackers. Because the intent is always there. Like the attackers have stronger intent. The attacker will get around your filters, whereas the defenders wouldn't be able to get around those filters very easily. So then, like, are you just going to grant everyone access to the capable models that has cybersecurity effects? And at that point, like, what's the point of putting up the filter in the first place? Whereas for open source model, right, we work with a lot of security firms. They can deploy the model themselves on-prem so that they can control access that way. But that access control is not restricted to any organizations unless they see the benefit. So then if they need to defend themselves, if anyone needs to defend themselves, they can call Fireworks to use GRM, to use K3 to figure out the patches today, right? Like they don't need to beg Anthropic for access, which may or may not be a great business proposition for Anthropic, but I'm just saying from just on a societal level, honestly, like why should everyone be begging a small set of companies just defend their network? Like that's just like insane to me, and anything that's insane I don't think will fly in the long run anyways. So to answer your question, I honestly think like the framing should be more in terms of access and control, in the sense like should a few companies be dictating who has access, and are those filters actually benefiting everyone? I genuinely think it's like not the case anymore, and they really should rethink about how they set up these filters.
Benny, I would love to double click more on this topic, but there is another topic that you and I agree we'll talk about, and it's one that is, I think it's quite timely. Everyone agrees that AI is transformational. The real question is whether perhaps are we building too much too fast? Are we repeating history? Is AI heading towards its own dot-com moment?
I'm excited about this topic, so let me take off my jacket. I honestly think the dot-com moment is very, very unique, and it's not something you can easily repeat for the AI wave. I think even if it has to unwind, it will probably look more like the real estate bubble. Well, why do I say that? I think the dot-com bubble honestly was like too much money too fast on things that you honestly cannot convince yourself whether it was the right time to do it. There were a lot of dark fibers. There were a lot of equipment that was being shipped without clear demand. Here we're talking about like multinationals and big companies making huge commitment to buy those throughput from OpenAnthropic, from Fireworks. The contracts are there. The demand is very real, and the underlying substrate is getting cheaper with those commitments. I think what will happen though is that there will be players in the system where they have too much leverage, and they will have to unwind when there's volatility, right? And I think that's normal though. That's normal in every market that it's going up and to the right. It's just that can you control the leverage correctly so that you don't burn yourself down in this process? But I genuinely believe it's not like .com bubble in the sense that like demand's not real. Demand is very real. There will be players who have too much leverage and need to unwind. And I honestly think like for anyone who's like borrowing like the eye-watering amount of money they're borrowing today, like they need to rethink like how much risk they should take on.
Right. So what you're saying there is the concern isn't AI itself, but leverage.
That I think is the real concern. So a lot of the projects that's already underway, especially in developed countries, have to go through a very rigorous environmental and different approvals. And those approvals are valuable to the residents here, right? Like we should make sure those projects are set up properly. At the same time, those approval takes time. There will be delays. Whether these people who borrow money against the GPUs have enough runway to build out these projects properly, that's the part I'm not sure. And then if certain players start to unwind, you need to make sure the number of people who have to unwind is substantially smaller than everyone else who's making money, so that we can catch the GPUs and continue to build. I think that's not like a systematic risk right now. That just there are players who are borrowing so much money and their project is getting delayed. It's like a risk, but I don't think it's systematic risk.
Sure. How dependent do you think is today's AI ecosystem, the companies that are building, how dependent are they on models like OpenAI and Anthropic?
I honestly think as open source prevails, they will become less and less dependent. And the other aspect to me, honestly, I'm thinking every day, is as certain set of tasks saturate, it will matter more, less and less. So because like we eat our own dog food at Fireworks, right? Like we use our own open source model all the time. And honestly, like we can't tell the difference from K3. We have a router product at Fireworks, and like I think someone made a mistake of just like turning the router on like indefinitely, and then like people didn't notice. But it was a mistake. Like it was supposed to route between like things internally at Fireworks, but the Fireworks employee just didn't notice. Like everything was going through K3. Because honestly, like there are a few moments of the day where I just like hate the bot, and it's like you're like how you're so stupid. Like this should be easy, you know? But like that happens maybe once or twice a day. Rest of the time, like for K3 and for GRM, for these like newer models, it just goes on. It goes on for hours. The answer at the end seems solid. I don't know if at this point you can tell the difference very easily. And then it's just a cost question. So I don't think we as an ecosystem relies on OpenAI and Anthropic to do super well. That's why I really hated the idea that every time there's a good open source model come out, Nvidia drops. Like that just blows my mind that like I cannot take it. I don't understand what these people are thinking. I honestly think as open source gets better, it's really, really easy to derive value out of GPUs. And even if some of these projects goes through where they're supposed to be contractors for OpenAnthropic, I mean, Fireworks and other players can just take it up, and we can just run inference and training on those GPUs. I don't think the ecosystem is dependent on OpenAnthropic at all. I do think what's tricky is that a lot of new clouds are borrowing against, they're borrowing from the bank using these contracts, using OpenAnthropic contracts. So how does that happen in like a volatile market where maybe some of these has to unwind? I have no idea. But I can confidently tell you, if there's GPUs, Fireworks can go scoop it up, and we can make money from those GPUs. That I'm confident.
I love that. One last question I do want to ask you about Fireworks. How would you describe the current product market fit for Fireworks? You know, what is the clear cut moat for you as a business today?
Specialized intelligence. We help people customize open source models, and we have had a lot of success running those, and we're trying our best to scale up. So we help Cursor tune Composer 2, Composer 2.5. We have a podcast on Sequoia about this. We help Cognition tune the Sui 1.7. We help like Vercel, Genspark. The most recent example is Harvey. We're working with Harvey to tune the tune the legal model. We have a blog about it. We're also working with a lot of startups on the cybersecurity space. So Depth First was a recent one where we train the cybersecurity model together with Factory AI. So we are very good at helping people customize their model, get their model to price competitiveness against frontier models, and then set up the data flywheel for them so that they can continue to improve the model and swap out the base model as new things come out. Honestly, that's where Fireworks have, I wouldn't say moat, but like have the most best product market fit right now. And we really love the idea of continue to help people set up their data flywheel, help these companies set up their own model so they can become independent. I genuinely believe, like, at the end of the day, like, access control is important, and these businesses need to be able to access their own model. It's just wild to me that like a lot of companies right now are basically have like a lifeline with one of the frontier labs, and just like their business is contingent on continued access, right? That for me is insane. Like, I don't even know how you can value a business 20 years out if that contingency is there. We want to help businesses become self-sufficient. We also want them to help set up their data flywheel so they can continue to improve the model. And we really believe in that mission. We really think it's a better world when all these businesses can own their own models. So then they are just self-sufficient and they don't have to kneel to everyone.
I love it. I mean, this will be a big play against the consultancies where they're coming into businesses, using the data the business already owns to then come up with some sort of solution for them. I mean, using your own model, being self-sufficient, as you said, the key piece is the data, right? Having your own intelligence, you already own the data, and customizing that as well. So I think there's a lot of key factors there that you mentioned that just seem to be so powerful. And to your point, from a valuation standpoint, how do you value a company when you're dependent on other businesses? Benny, this has been absolutely eye-opening and I think very timely. So we'll do our best to get this out as soon as possible. We wrap up every single episode with a book recommendation. I definitely want to bring you back on for a part 2 because I think this would be there's a lot more to unpack. But just to wrap up this episode, Benny, what would be your book recommendation?
Yeah, I thought about it. I don't have a creative one, honestly. My favorite is The Principle from Ray Dalio. Like, you asked me this question earlier, and I just thought about it. It's like that book, honestly, it's so simple.
Yeah,
it looks a little bit thick.
Yeah,
but it's so simple in the sense that you're not supposed to borrow eye-watering amount of money. And it's like a very long book explaining the history and like all the rationale about why you're not supposed to borrow that much money. But you're not supposed to borrow that much money. And I think that's also a good book for all the real estate infrastructure players in the system to read that book and then maybe think about how to control the risk and leverage.
Yeah, Ray Dalio and Principles, it definitely goes down as one of my favorite books I've ever read. I completely agree with you. I think one of the key concepts for me from that book that I always depend on is the concept of ego, and how ego is blindness. You know, when you're thinking about when you're building businesses or you're building a team, just having those sort of radars that block you out from thinking and seeing everything that's around you. I remember this one particular concept that's come out of the book that I really enjoyed. But I do agree with you. Principles is a great book. What would you say is your key takeaway from that book?
No, I was honest. Like, just don't borrow eye-watering amount of money. Just like all the cycles he showed for like history, and went through like all the countries and dynasties, and I was genuine about like all the people who are borrowing eye-watering amount of money for GPUs. Like, I think twice. It's okay for other people to make those money. You know, like, you don't have to be the only one making those money. Absolutely.
Benny, it was an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed it. These are some interesting times right now, exciting times. AI is transformational, and you've got a phenomenal business, a very successful business, and I'm excited to do this again with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Benny. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Inside the Silicon Mind. This podcast is powered by Harrison Clark. For more episodes, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. As always, stay curious, stay consistent, and stay inside the Silicon Mind.